Back in 2008, South Park made an episode where the internet stops working for one day, and a family loads up their car and drives across the country to find more of it, sleeping in a refugee camp, rationed to 40 seconds of screen time a day. It played as a goofy joke about a thing that could never happen. Watch it now and it does not feel like a joke. It feels like a prediction. For more than 10 years, South Park kept making the same point about phones and the lives we live through them, just in a new costume every time. The show is not warning you that the device will break you. Its real claim is darker than that. The screen never broke anyone. It handed each person an easy way to become the worst version of who they already were, and then it sat back and watched it happen, season by season, until the joke stopped being funny. Welcome to East Park. Let's get started. The Day the Internet Disappeared Over Logging is the 6th episode of the 12th season of South Park. It first aired on April 16, 2008, and it was the 173rd episode the show had made. Trey Parker, one of the two men who created the show, wrote it and directed it. On paper, it sounds like a small idea. The internet stops working in one small mountain town in Colorado, and a family packs up and drives west to find more of it. That is the whole plot. And yet this quiet little episode, made back when most people still sat at a desk to get online, ends up being the first time the show looked straight at something that would take over the next 10 years of its life. To understand why this episode matters so much, you have to remember where the world was in early 2008. The first iPhone had only been out for about 10 months. Hardly anyone had one. Most people did not carry the internet in their pocket. They walked over to a computer in the corner of a room, sat down, waited for it to wake up, and got online. The thing that would soon swallow everyone whole was still mostly stuck in one spot in the house. So when this episode shows a town falling apart without the internet, it is doing something strange and early. It is showing the panic before the world had even handed everyone the easy way to feed that panic. The need came first. The phone just made the need portable. The episode opens at night in the Marsh house with the whole family online at the same time in different rooms. Stan is clicking through random things. His older sister Shelly is typing back and forth with a boy named Amir, who lives all the way in Montana and who she calls her boyfriend, even though they have never once stood in the same room. Their dad, Randy, is in another room secretly watching adult videos he does not want anyone to know about. The mom, Sharon, walks through and tells them all to shut it down and go to bed. She says the simplest, most reasonable thing a parent could say. The internet will still be there in the morning. Go to sleep. Everyone grumbles, but they listen, and the house goes dark. That one ordinary sentence from Sharon is the hinge the whole episode swings on. The internet will still be there in the morning. She is wrong. The next day, Stan wakes up, sits at his computer, and there is nothing. No connection. He tries again. Still nothing. A small, cold feeling starts in his stomach, and he rushes across town to the Broflovsky house, sure that the problem is just his own. But Kyle has no internet either. Then the two families pile into the car and drive to the coffee shop, because the coffee shop always has the free signal everyone leans on. The coffee shop is dead too. By now, the fear is spreading from house to house, and it does not take long to learn the truth. It is not one computer. It is not one street. The whole town is cut off, and soon it turns out the whole country is cut off. What the show does next is the clever part, and it is worth slowing down on. The people of South Park react to a lost internet connection exactly the way people in old stories reacted to losing their farms, their food, and their homes. The episode is built as a copy of an old and famous American story called The Grapes of Wrath. That story, written long ago, is about poor families who lost everything during a terrible time and packed up their trucks to drive west to California, hoping to find work and food and a way to stay alive. South Park takes that heavy, sad, serious shape and drops a bunch of cartoon characters into it, except the thing they have lost is not food. It is Wi-Fi. The families load up their cars. They drive west. They are looking for the one place left where a person can still get online. The animation changes to make sure the joke lands. When the families begin their journey to California, the color drains out of the screen. Everything turns to gray, the way old films looked before color existed. It is a small choice, but it does a lot of work. It tells your eye that this is supposed to feel like an old story about real hardship and real loss. And then your brain catches up and remembers that the great tragedy these people are driving across the country to fix is that they cannot check their email. The gap between how serious it looks and how silly the actual problem is becomes the entire point. When the families finally reach California, they do not find freedom, they find a camp. The show calls it a refugee camp, which is the name for the rough, crowded places real people are forced into when they have fled a war or a disaster and have nowhere else to go. In the camp, there is exactly one working computer, and it has to serve everyone. Each family is allowed 40 seconds of internet per day, day, 40 seconds. When your time runs out, the workers physically grab you and drag you away from the desk so the next desperate person can have their turn. At night, the staff lock the single computer inside a metal storage container, like it is treasure, or medicine, or the last clean water on Earth. People sit in the dirt and wait for their tiny daily window, the way a starving person waits for a meal. There is a moment in the camp that captures the whole mood. A man tells a sad story about his own children. He explains, in the heavy voice of someone who has lived through real grief, that his kids starved to death while waiting for a single web page to finish loading. The loading bar, he says, only ever got about halfway. It is a horrible thing to say out loud, and it is also completely ridiculous. And the show wants both of those feelings to sit in your chest at the same time. Nobody actually starved because of a slow page, but the way the man grieves over it tells you that, in his head, the loss feels that big. The internet has become, in his mind, the difference between living and dying. Randy is the character the show uses to push the joke as far as it can go. He cannot make it through the days without getting online, and not for noble reasons. He needs it for the private videos he was watching the very first night. At one point, he sneaks into the locked storage container in the dark to use the computer in secret, and what follows is a scene the people who make the show have openly called one of the most over-the-top things they have ever put on screen. The need has stopped being a habit. It has become something that owns him completely, something he will crawl through the dark and break the rules to satisfy, while telling everyone around him that he is a calm and reasonable man. The way out of the whole mess is almost insultingly simple, and that simplicity is its own little joke. The government, out of options, sends Kyle to the so-called center of the internet. He is brought to a giant version of the small box that sits in many homes and sends out the signal, the kind of box people barely think about. Kyle looks at this enormous machine, and he does the one thing every person on Earth already knows to do when their internet stops working. He unplugs it, waits, and plugs it back in. The light on the machine turns from a worried color to a calm green. The internet comes back. Everyone in the camp cheers and grabs their computers and dives back in, as if the past days of suffering had never happened, as if no lesson had been learned at all. And here is the part that quietly carries the deepest idea in the episode. Shelly, the older sister, has spent the whole story aching to talk to her online boyfriend Amir again. When the internet returns, she gets ready to type to him, and then a boy calls out her name across the camp. It is the real Amir. His family fled west looking for a signal too, and now the two of them are finally standing face to face for the first time ever, in the same dirt, breathing the same air. This is the dream. This is the thing the connection was supposed to be standing in for all along. They look at each other. They have nothing to say. It is painful and stiff and awkward, and after a few uncomfortable seconds, they agree that it would honestly be better if they just went back to emailing each other instead. Two people who crossed a country to be near each other choose a screen over the real thing, even when the real thing is standing right in front of them. That tiny, easy-to-miss moment is the seed of everything the show would spend the next decade digging into. It is not really a story about a broken internet connection. It is a story about people who have already quietly traded the real world for the screen, and who would make that same trade again in a heartbeat, given the choice. The connection did not force Shelly to pick it over a real boy. She picked it on her own. The machine only gave her the option. The wanting was already there. The episode closes with Randy giving a big, dramatic speech. He dresses up in a costume meant to look wise and serious, copying the style of a famous actor who once gave a long, preachy speech about protecting nature at the end of one of his movies. Randy warns the crowd that the internet is like a precious natural resource, something that can run dry if people are greedy with it. He tells everyone to slow down, use it only when you truly need it. Do not waste it on nothing. He even sets a careful daily limit on how much adult content a reasonable person should view. The crowd nods along, moved by his wisdom. And of course, the second the internet is fully back, every single person ignores every word he said and goes right back to using it exactly as much as before. The warning lands on no one. The town learns nothing. They were saved, and they remain unchanged. When this episode came out, it played mostly as a goofy what if. What if the internet just vanished one day? Haha, look how crazy everyone would act. Watching it now, years later, it does not feel like a what if anymore. It feels like a prediction that came true. The 40 seconds of rationed access, the people dragged away from the screen, the man grieving a loading bar, the two kids who pick email over a real face. None of that reads as silly exaggeration in a world where many people now feel a real spike of fear when their phone battery hits 1%. The show was laughing at a future that had not fully arrived yet, and the laugh has slowly curdled into something closer to a warning. The reason overlogging is the right place to begin is that it draws the line the entire show would keep crossing for the next 10 years. The line is this: the problem was never the wires or the screens or the machines themselves. The machines just sat there. The problem was the size of the want inside the people. A want so big, they would drive across a country to feed it and then refuse to learn a thing once it was fed. South Park noticed that hunger early, before the phone had even finished crawling into everyone's pocket. It saw the shape of the thing while the thing was still small. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But a hunger needs something to feed on. In 2008, the screen was still stuck on a desk, something you walked up to and then walked away from. The story of how that screen left the desk, slipped into a pocket, and slowly stopped feeling like a thing you owned and started feeling like a part of your own body begins with a single shiny object that the whole town suddenly could not live without. Section 2. The phone becomes part of you. Human Centipede is the first episode of the 15th season of South Park. It first aired on April 27, 2011, and it was the 210th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The title is a strange, ugly word that mashes together a famous Apple product with the name of a famous horror movie, and the moment you hear it, you can tell the show is about to be mean about something. What it is being mean about is the way a shiny piece of glass and metal had, in just a few short years, gone from a thing people owned to a thing people felt they could not be a full person without. Think about how much had changed since the last episode we looked at. Overlogging came out in 2008, when the screen still lived on a desk and most people walked up to it and then walked away. Just 3 years later, the world was different in a way that is hard to overstate. The iPad had come out in 2010. The iPhone was everywhere. The internet was no longer a place you visited. It was a thing you carried, a thing in your hand, a thing you touched hundreds of times a day without thinking. And the show noticed that the device had crawled out of the corner of the room and was beginning to feel less like a tool and more like a body part. This episode is the show watching that change happen and deciding to laugh at how fast everyone surrendered to it. There are two stories braided together in the episode, and both are about the same thing seen from different angles. The first story belongs to Cartman, and it is about wanting the device for what it says about you. The second story belongs to Kyle, and it is about what the device quietly takes from you while you are busy wanting it. Put them next to each other, and you get a full picture of how a phone or a tablet had stopped being a product and started being a part of a person's identity. Cartman's story opens with him bragging. He stands among the other kids and shows off his brand new iPad, talking down to everyone who does not have one, treating the device like proof that he is better than they are. Then a boy named Craig calls his bluff. It turns out Cartman does not have an iPad at all. He has a flat piece of glass tucked inside an iPad case, a fake, an empty shell dressed up to look like the real thing. The other kids laugh at him, and Cartman is crushed because the laughter is not really about the lie. It is about the fact that he got caught carrying this much. He needed the others to believe he had the thing, because in his mind, having the thing and being someone worth respecting had become the same fact. What happens next is one of the most uncomfortable runs in the whole episode, and it shows how deep the want goes. Cartman drags his mom, Leanne, to the store to buy him a real iPad. When they get there, she sees the price, and she gently suggests a cheaper tablet instead, a different brand that does the same things for less money. To a normal person, this is a kind and sensible offer from a parent who does not have endless cash. To Cartman, it is an unforgivable betrayal. He explodes. He throws a screaming public tantrum in the middle of the store, loudly accusing his own mother of ruining his life, embarrassing her in front of every stranger there. He does not want a tablet. He wants the tablet, the specific one, the one with the right name on the back, because the name is the entire point. A cheaper device that works just as well is worthless to him, because you cannot show off a name nobody is impressed by. For once in the whole series, Leanne does not give in. She is so humiliated by his behavior that she walks out of the store and buys him nothing. And Cartman, instead of feeling shame, doubles down. He takes his complaint to a famous television talk show, going on air to tell the world that his mother has wronged him, twisting the words about being treated unfairly until the studio audience misunderstands and turns against her. He weaponizes a public stage to punish a parent who would not buy him a status symbol. The device he is fighting over barely appears in his own story. That is the joke. He is willing to burn down his relationship with his mother and shame her on national television, and the actual reason underneath all of it is that he wants a thing that will make other children think he is important. While Cartman fights to own the device, Kyle's story shows the price that device quietly asks in return, and this is where the episode gets genuinely sharp. Kyle, like nearly everyone, downloads an update for the software on his Apple account. Before the update can run, a long block of legal text appears on the screen, the kind everyone has seen 1,000 times. It is the agreement, the wall of words you are supposed to read before you tap the button that says you accept it. Kyle does what every single person watching has done. He scrolls past it without reading a word and taps agree, because he is in a hurry and he wants the thing to work and nobody actually reads that stuff. The horror begins almost immediately. Strange men in suits start chasing Kyle through the town. They are from Apple, and they explain, very calmly, that everything they are about to do to him is completely allowed because he agreed to it. It is right there in the text he scrolled past. By tapping that single button, Kyle signed away rights he did not know he had, and now the company owns the use of his body. They catch him, they take him, and they sew him together with two other people who also never read the words, mouth to back end, into a single living machine that browses the web and sends messages, a grotesque human device that the company unveils on a bright stage as its exciting new product. It is disgusting on purpose, and the disgust is doing a job. The show is taking a thing every person does without a second thought, agreeing to terms they have not read, and following it all the way to its most monstrous possible end. The point is not that Apple will literally turn you into furniture. The point is that you have handed enormous power over your own life to companies you trust completely, based on agreements you have never once read, and you did it cheerfully, with a tap, because reading the words felt like too much effort and you wanted the device to work right now. Kyle's body becoming company property is just the cartoon version of a real surrender that millions of people make every day and never think about. There is a detail in the real world that makes this episode land even harder, and it is worth knowing because it is true. In the days right before this episode aired, there was a real news scandal about Apple devices secretly keeping records of where their owners had been, tracking their locations without people fully understanding it was happening. The company put out a public apology about it just 2 days before the episode reached television. So when the show built an entire story around the idea that your device knows more about you than you realize, and that you signed up for it without reading the fine print, it was not pulling that fear out of nowhere. It was reaching into a real worry that was sitting in the news that very week. The fiction was only a half step ahead of the fact. Set the two stories side by side, and the full idea clicks into place. Cartman shows you the pull of the device, the way it promises to tell the world who you are, the way wanting it can take over a person until they will humiliate the people who love them just to get it. Kyle shows you the cost of the device, the way it quietly takes things from you, your privacy, your control, your say over your own self, and the way you hand all of that over without a fight because you never bothered to read what you were agreeing to. One kid sells his dignity to get the thing. The other kid signs away his body to use the thing. Both of them did it to themselves. The company in the story is greedy and cruel, but it never forced anyone. It just held out the device, and people came running, agreeing to anything, asking no questions. This is the same idea that lived inside overlogging, but it has grown up and moved closer. In the earlier episode, the hunger was for a connection that still lived on a desk. Here, the hunger has wrapped itself around a specific object you hold in your hand, an object that has started to feel like proof of who you are, and a piece of who you are at the same time. The screen has left the corner of the room, it has climbed into the pocket, and from the pocket it is reaching towards something deeper. It is becoming part of the self. Cartman without the right tablet feels like less of a person. Kyle, by tapping one button, lets the device claim ownership of his actual flesh. In both cases, the line between the person and the machine has started to smudge. What makes the episode more than just a long Apple joke is how honest it is about whose fault this is. It would be easy, and lazy, to make a story where the big company is the only villain and the regular people are innocent victims. The show refuses to do that. The men in suits are clearly meant to be unsettling, yes, but Kyle is the one who tapped agree without reading. Cartman is the one who chose a tablet over his own mother's dignity. The townspeople are the ones who treat the device like air, like something they cannot breathe without. The company built the trap, but the people walked into it smiling, holding out their wrists, asking how soon they could have the next version. The show is not letting anyone off the hook, least of all the audience, who has done the exact same thing with the exact same fine print on the exact same kind of device. When you step back, Human Centipede is the moment in this whole story where the device stops being something outside of a person and starts becoming something inside of them. In 2008, the screen was a place you went. By 2011, the screen was a thing you were. The show caught that shift at the exact moment it was happening, and it chose to tell the story through a tantrum in a store and a body sewn into a machine. Two images ugly enough that you cannot forget them. Underneath the gross jokes is a clean and serious claim. You did not lose anything to these devices that you did not hand over yourself, and you handed it over without reading the terms, because the wanting was louder than the caution. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the device is in the hand now. It is starting to feel like part of the body, and once a screen is that close to a person that constantly held, that trusted, a new and stranger thing becomes possible. The screen does not just sit there waiting to be looked at. It starts looking back. It begins to watch, to listen, to keep a record of every small thing a person does. And the truly odd part is that the people being watched stop minding at all, and some of them even begin to like it. Section 3. Everyone is watching and nobody minds Let Go. Let Gov is the first episode of the 17th season of South Park. It first aired on September 25th, 2013, and it was the 238th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It came out at a strange and tense moment in real life. That summer, a man had leaked a huge pile of secret government papers showing that the United States government had quietly been collecting information on regular people, reading into their emails and phone records on a scale almost nobody had known about. The whole country was arguing about it. People were frightened and angry about being watched. And South Park, watching that argument happen, decided to point its camera somewhere unexpected. Not at the government doing the watching, but at the people doing the complaining. And the strange way those same people happily handed over every private detail of their lives with their own two thumbs. The setup starts at the bus stop, which is one of the show's oldest, plainest little stages. Cartman shows up loudly talking on his phone, with the speaker turned all the way up so everyone nearby has to hear both sides of his pointless conversation. He is telling some story about himself that is obviously a lie, broadcasting it to the whole street, sharing every dull and untrue detail of his day at full volume. Kyle, standing there, gets annoyed and tells him to take it somewhere else, or at least turn the speaker off. And here is where Cartman's broken logic kicks in. He accuses Kyle of spying on him. In Cartman's mind, the fact that Kyle can hear a conversation Cartman is shouting into the open air means Kyle is the one invading Cartman's privacy. He is blasting his private life into a public space and then getting furious that someone heard it. That little flip is the whole engine of the episode in one small package. Cartman becomes convinced the government is watching him. He decides this is a terrible crime against his freedom, and he works himself into a panic about being spied on. So he hatches a plan to expose the people who watch. He glues on a fake mustache, gives a false name, and gets himself hired at the agency that does the secret watching, planning to blow the whole thing open and tell the world the truth. He casts himself as a brave hero who will save everyone from being spied on. The problem, which the show reveals slowly and cruelly, is that Cartman does not actually mind being watched. What he minds is the possibility that he is not being watched, that nobody finds him interesting enough to bother, because once he is inside the agency, Cartman goes looking for his own file. He wants to see what the powerful watchers have written about him, the dangerous and important Eric Cartman, and he finds that the agency has indeed made a note about him. The note says he is unimportant, not a threat, not worth watching, a nobody. This wrecks him. The boy who marched in claiming he wanted privacy is suddenly desperate to be surveilled, begging the agency to take him seriously, to mark him down as a person worth keeping an eye on. His whole crusade against being watched collapses the instant he learns the watchers were not interested in him. He never wanted privacy. He wanted importance, and being watched felt like proof of it. Running alongside Cartman's story is the Butters story, and this is where the episode says its smartest thing. Butters, the sweet and simple boy who believes whatever he is told, hears that the government watches everything everyone does. He sees everything we do. To Butters, a being that watches over all of us at all times, that knows our every action, that is always present and always paying attention, sounds exactly like one thing. It sounds like God. So Butters begins to treat the government as something holy. He starts to pray to it. At night, he speaks softly to the watchers, thanking them for keeping his family safe, asking them politely for the things he wants, the way a person prays to heaven. Then Butters, getting his letters mixed up, goes to the wrong office. Instead of the spy agency, he walks into the place where people go to deal with their cars and driving papers, a famously slow and joyless government office where everyone dreads waiting in line. And Butters, believing he is in a holy place, kneels at the counter and begins to confess his sins. He tells the board worker behind the desk every bad thought he has had, every small shameful thing he has done, pouring out his private heart to a stranger and a clipboard. He treats the act of confessing everything, of holding nothing back, of laying his whole inner life bare before the watching power, as something that will cleanse him and make him good. What makes this so sharp is what it is really describing. Butters voluntarily walking up to a government desk and confessing every private detail of his life, unprompted, joyfully, believing it makes him a better person, is a near-perfect picture of how people had begun to behave online. Nobody was forcing anyone to post where they were, what they ate, who they loved, what they feared, what they did last night. People were doing it themselves, constantly, freely, treating the act of broadcasting their private lives to a watching audience as something that felt good, something that felt almost cleansing. Butters at the counter is every person who tells the whole internet their secrets and calls it being open and honest. The watching does not have to be forced when people line up to confess on their own. Soon, other townspeople join Butters at the counter, and a whole crowd forms, all of them confessing their private business out loud to the government office, all of them feeling lighter and holier for having done it. A grown man stands up and announces an embarrassing private thing he did at home, and instead of shame, the crowd cheers him on, celebrating his openness. The show is drawing a straight line you cannot unsee once you have seen it. The same people who would scream about their privacy being invaded were, at the very same time, racing to give that privacy away, telling everyone everything, treating exposure as a virtue. The episode hammers the point home with a fake product called by a crude name, a made-up gadget advertised by a famous actor. This gadget takes whatever thought is in your head and broadcasts it straight out to the world. No phone needed, no typing, no pause to think first. Your raw thoughts simply pour out into public view the moment you have them. The actor in the advertisement admits he sometimes says ugly, hateful things on the internet, and rather than take responsibility, he blames his own thumbs for typing them, and so he chops his thumbs off in the advertisement. It is a grim little joke, but the target is clear. People had started firing their every half-formed thought into the public square with no filter and no pause, and then acting shocked and blameless when those thoughts turned out to be cruel. The device made it instant. The instantness was the trap. Put Cartman and Butters together and the episode's full claim appears. Cartman shows you that people do not really fear being watched. Deep down they want it, because being watched feels like mattering, and his panic was never about privacy, but about the terror of being a nobody bothered to track. Butters shows you that people will hand over their most private selves freely, even eagerly, if you let them feel that confessing makes them good. Between the two of them, the government barely has to do any work at all. The watchers in this story are almost lazy. They do not need to break into anyone's life and steal their secrets. The people bring the secrets to the counter themselves, smiling, asking to be seen. This connects straight back to the road the show had been walking. In overlogging, people could not bear to be without the connection. In Human Centipede, they signed away their rights and their privacy with a single tap because they wanted the device. Now, in Let Go, Let Gov, the surrender goes one layer deeper. People are not just failing to protect their privacy, they are actively giving it away on purpose, posting it, confessing it, broadcasting it, because being watched has started to feel like being important, and being exposed has started to feel like being honest. The screen that climbed into the pocket in the last episode has now become a place people willingly empty their whole inner lives into, and they call it freedom while they do it. The reason the episode bothers to mock the people instead of the spies is the same reason the whole show keeps coming back to this topic. It would have been easy to make a simple story where the government is the bad guy and we are all helpless victims being watched against our will. Plenty of stories were doing exactly that in 2013. South Park looked at that easy story and turned away from it because it did not believe the easy story was true. The harder truth, the one the episode insists on, is that the watching only works because the watched cooperate. The government did not have to pry these lives open. The lives were already open, posted in public, confessed at the counter, broadcast at full volume from the bus stop, handed over by people who had decided that being seen was the same thing as being loved. When this episode aired, in the middle of a national panic about being spied on, plenty of viewers expected the show to join the anger and point its finger at the powerful. Instead, it pointed the finger back at the ordinary person holding the phone. The joke was on the audience, on the very people who would watch this episode, and then immediately pick up their devices and tell the world where they were and what they thought and how they felt, without anyone asking, because the wanting to be seen had grown larger than any fear of being watched. The show had found the same hunger it always found, wearing one more new costume. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one more layer to all this watching though, and it is the layer that hurts the most. Up to this point, the show has looked at people giving away their privacy and their real thoughts, but the strangest surrender of all was not about what people gave away, it was about what they invented. Because a person who knows the whole world is looking does not just hand over the truth about themselves. Slowly, carefully, they begin to build a better, smoother, more beautiful version of themselves to show that watching world, a face that was never real, and they start to believe that polished face is who they actually are. Section 4. The face that was never real. The Hobbit is the 10th and final episode of the 17th season of South Park. It first aired on December 11th, 2013, and it was the 244th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It closed out the season on one of the darkest and quietest notes the show had ever ever ended on, with no big joke at the finish line, just a sad little girl, an empty room, and a screen. Where the last episode looked at people giving away their real thoughts to a watching world, this one looks at the opposite move. It looks at people who stop showing the world the truth about themselves and start building a prettier, faker version instead, a face that was never real, until that fake face becomes the only one anyone is allowed to have. The story begins with a small, kind act. Wendy, who leads the cheerleading group at school, is trying to help a girl named Lisa Berger. Lisa is shy and unsure of herself, and Wendy wants to lift her up to give her some confidence. Wendy suggests that Lisa ask out a boy she likes, a boy named Butters, as a way to feel braver. So Lisa works up her courage and asks Butters out, and Butters turns her down flat, telling her plainly that she is too fat for him. It is a cruel little moment, the kind of thing children say without understanding the size of the wound they are leaving. Wendy is furious, and she confronts Butters about it. Butters defends himself by explaining what he thinks a beautiful girl is supposed to look like. He points to his idea of the perfect woman, a famous celebrity whose pictures he has seen everywhere, a woman he believes is flawless. And this is the moment Wendy understands the real problem. She tells Butters something true that he cannot accept. She tells him that the famous woman he worships does not actually look like her pictures. The pictures are changed. They are touched up and reshaped on a computer before anyone ever sees them. The flawless face he is comparing Lisa to is not a real face at all. It is a drawing built on top of a photograph, polished until the human being underneath has been smoothed away. The computer tool that does this reshaping is the quiet villain of the whole episode. It is the program that lets a person take a photo and stretch it, shrink it, erase the flaws, fix the skin, change the shape of a body, until the picture shows something that never existed. Wendy decides the best way to teach Butters is to show him. She sits him down and takes a plain photo of Lisa and begins to change it right in front of his eyes. She makes the waist smaller. She fixes the skin. She reshapes the face. She is doing this to prove a point, to say, look, this is fake. This is how the lie is made. Watch me build it, so you understand it is not real. And the lesson fails completely, in a way that is both funny and chilling. Butters watches Wendy build the fake image with his own eyes. He sees her do it. He knows the picture is changed because he just watched her change it, and he falls in love with the fake picture anyway. He looks at the reshaped, false version of Lisa and decides that this lie he just watched get made is the real Lisa, the beautiful one, the one worth wanting. He is so eager to ask her out now that he posts the fake picture online for everyone to see. The truth made no difference at all. He saw the lie get built, and he chose to believe the lie, because the lie was prettier, and pretty was the only thing his eye cared about. From there, the fake face spreads through the whole school like a sickness. The other girls see what happened to Lisa, how a changed picture made her suddenly popular and admired, and they want it too. Lisa, who was shy and unsure at the start, becomes proud and cruel once her fake image makes her famous. The other cheerleaders come to Wendy and ask her to make changed pictures of them as well, so they can compete, so they can be admired the same way. They want the false face. They have seen that the false face wins, that it gets attention and boys and applause, and so they line up to have their real selves erased and replaced with the prettier lie. Wendy refuses. She is the one person in the whole story who can see clearly what is happening, and she will not take part in it. She says no, because she understands that making these fake pictures only deepens the trap, only teaches everyone that their real faces are not good enough, only spreads the lie further. She tries to stand on the truth. She tries to be the one person who insists that real is better than fake, that a true face is worth more than a polished one, and the world punishes her for it. This is the cruelest turn in the episode, and the most honest one. When Wendy tries to explain that the pictures are fake, that the famous woman does not really look like that everyone is chasing something that does not exist, nobody hears her point. They decide she is simply jealous. They decide she is bitter and ugly inside, a hater, a girl who is angry that other girls are prettier than she is. Even the adults take this view. The school counselor scolds her. The grown-ups treat her honesty as a sickness, something to be cured, and they actually talk about sending her away to be fixed, as if telling the truth about fake images were the thing wrong with her. The girl who refuses to lie is treated as the problem. The lie itself is left completely alone. There is a famous celebrity husband who shows up throughout the episode, the partner of the flawless woman in the pictures, and his part adds another sad layer. He keeps trying to defend his wife, to prove to everyone that she really is as beautiful as her pictures, that she is not changed or faked. But the harder he tries, the more he accidentally proves the opposite. Every time he opens his mouth to defend the real woman, he ends up listing the ways she does not match her own images. He cannot quite say she looks like her pictures, because she does not, and some part of him knows it, even as he fights to deny it out loud. He is a man trapped defending a face that that was never real, unable to admit the truth even to himself, because the lie has become too valuable and too public to take back. The ending is what makes this episode sit in your chest long after it is over. After all her fighting, after standing alone for the truth, after being mocked and scolded and called jealous by everyone including the adults who should have known better, Wendy breaks. She gives up. In the final scene, she sits alone in the school computer room and she takes a photo of herself and she begins to change it, the same way she changed Lisa's at the start. She makes herself thinner. She fixes her own face. She builds the fake version of herself, the one she swore she would never make, the one she knew was a lie, and then she sends it out for everyone to see. She joins them. She surrenders. The one person who saw the truth clearly and fought for it ends up doing the very thing she fought against, because the cost of holding out was simply too high. And then the show does something it almost never does. The episode ends with the credits rolling in silence. No music, no final joke, no wink to let you know it is all in good fun. Just the quiet of that empty computer room and a girl who gave up, the screen still glowing. The show wanted you to feel the weight of what just happened without any comfort wrapped around it. Wendy losing was not played for a laugh. It was played for the small, real sadness of watching someone trade their true self for a lie because the world left them no room to do anything else. What makes this episode so important to the whole story the show is telling is that it moves the harm to a new and deeper place. In the earlier episodes, people gave away their privacy, their rights, their secrets. Here, people give away something even more personal. They give away their own faces. They give away the truth of what they look like, what they really are, and they replace it with a polished lie, and then they are forced to live inside that lie because everyone around them has agreed to believe it. The screen is no longer just a thing in the pocket or a place to confess. The screen has become a mirror that shows a false reflection, and people have started to prefer the false reflection to their own real one. This is the same hunger the show keeps finding, only now it has turned inward and gotten sadder. The wanting to be seen, which drove Butters to confess at the counter in the last episode, has curdled into a wanting to be seen as something better than you are. And the moment one person builds a better fake self, everyone else has to build one too, just to keep up, just to not disappear. Lisa's fake picture forced the other girls to want fake pictures. Their fake pictures left Wendy with a choice between standing alone in the truth or joining the lie. She chose the lie, because by the end there was no reward left for the truth, only punishment. The fake face was not one girl's vanity. It was a trap that pulled everyone in, one picture at a time. The episode is also honest about who is to blame, the same way the show is always honest about it. The computer tool did not force anyone to lie about their face. The famous celebrities who started the trend are part of it, yes, and the magazines and the companies that profit from making people feel ugly are part of it too. But the children in the story made their own choices. Butters chose to love the lie after watching it get built. The cheerleaders chose to want fake pictures of themselves. The whole school chose to treat Wendy's honesty as jealousy because the truth was inconvenient and the lie was pleasant. Even Wendy, in the end, made a choice. The machine offered the false face. The people reached for it. Nobody held a gun to anyone's head. They simply decided, one by one, that the prettier lie was easier to live with than the plain truth. When this episode came out, it was praised as one of the strongest of its season, and people pointed especially to that silent ending as the thing that made it land. It refused to undo the damage. It refused to snap the world back to normal and pretend nothing happened, the way a lot of cartoons do. It left Wendy beaten and the lie victorious, and it asked the audience to sit with that. Years later, in a world where changing your own face before showing it to anyone has become an ordinary daily habit for millions of people, where filters smooth every photo before it is ever shared, the episode reads less like a wild exaggeration and more like a thing that quietly came true. The face that was never real became, for a lot of people, the only face they were willing to show. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Every step in this story has been a small surrender, and every surrender was made willingly, which is exactly what makes it slippery. Butters chose the lie, Wendy chose to give in, and to the person making them, these all feel like wanting, like deciding, like simple free choice. The show was about to look closer at that feeling and ask a harder question. What happens when the thing in your hand was built, on purpose, by smart people in a room, to make sure you can never really choose to put it down? Section 5, built to keep you hooked. Freemium Isn't Free is the 6th episode of the 18th season of South Park. It first aired on November 5th, 2014, and it was the 253rd episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The two men who make the show have openly called it their favorite episode of that whole season, and it was even put up for one of television's biggest awards, a nod the show rarely got. The reason it matters so much to this story is simple. Every episode before this one looked at people choosing the screen. This is the episode where the show stops and asks a harder question. What if the choosing was never really free at all? What if the thing in your hand was built, on purpose, by smart people in a room, so that you could not put it down even when you wanted to? To get there, the show takes aim at a specific kind of phone game, the kind that costs nothing to start. You see an advertisement, the game looks fun, and the best part is that it is free. You download it and you begin to play, and at first it really does cost nothing. But the game is built so that the longer you play, the more it slows down and nags at you, and the only way to make it move faster or feel better is to spend a little real money. Just a small amount, just a tiny payment to skip the boring wait, and then another, and then another. The game was never really free. It was free to get you in the door, and then it was built to slowly pull money out of you, a few coins at a time, forever. The story follows Stan. He hears about a new game from his friend Jimmy, a game built around the two cartoon characters the show's kids love, Terrence and Philip. Jimmy is so excited about it, so eager for Stan to play, that something already feels slightly off about how hard he is pushing it. Stan downloads the game, and at first he does not even like it. He plays it and finds it boring. That is the first strange thing the episode wants you to notice. Stan does not get hooked because the game is fun. He gets hooked even though the game is dull. The fun was never the point. The hook was the point. Slowly, the game sinks its teeth into him. It asks for a little money to keep things moving, and Stan pays it. Then, a little more. The game is designed to make each small payment feel reasonable in the moment. Just a tiny bit to skip the wait. Just a small amount to keep going. And those tiny payments pile up in a way Stan never sees coming. His parents discover he has spent hundreds of dollars. Later, in the middle of the night, the game keeps buzzing his phone, sending him little messages, poking at him, calling him back, and Stan, unable to resist, picks it up again and spends an enormous amount of money in a single sleepless stretch, thousands of dollars, on a game he does not even enjoy. He is not playing anymore. He is being played. Now, the show could have stopped there and just made fun of a silly kid wasting money. Instead, it does the thing that makes this episode special. It pulls back the curtain and shows you exactly how the trap is built, in plain words, on purpose, so you cannot pretend you did not understand. The two cartoon characters whose faces are on the game, Terrence and Philip, get upset that their names are being used to take money from people, and they demand an explanation. And a character steps forward to explain the whole machine, calmly, like a teacher at a board, laying out the secret rules these games are built on. He explains that the game must be just barely fun. Not actually fun, because if the game were truly fun, people would simply enjoy playing it and would never feel the need to pay. The game has to sit in a careful spot where it is interesting enough to keep you tapping, but frustrating enough that you keep wanting to pay to make the frustration go away. He explains that the game should be playable in short little bursts, so a person can pick it up anywhere, in line, in bed, on the toilet, anytime there is a spare moment, so it can wedge itself into every empty crack of a person's day. He explains the loop the game runs you through over and over, the cycle of doing a small thing, getting a small reward, wanting the next small thing, paying to get there faster, and starting again, round and round, with no real end, because an end would let you stop. The most important thing he explains is who the game is really built for. These games, he says, do not make most of their money from most of their players. The vast majority of people download the game, mess around for a bit, maybe spend $1 or $2, and drift away. The game does not care about them. The game is built to find the small handful of people who cannot stop, the ones with something inside them that makes it nearly impossible to put the thing down, and to pull as much money out of those few people as it possibly can. The whole machine is aimed at the people least able to resist it. The trap is shaped specifically to catch the ones who will get caught hardest. This is the moment the show's whole long argument takes a sharp and serious turn. Up to now, the people in these episodes have looked like they were making choices. Cartman chose to want the tablet. Butters chose to love the fake picture. Wendy chose to give in. It all felt like wanting, like deciding. This episode looks at that feeling of choosing and says very clearly that the choosing has been tampered with. Smart people in a room studied how the human mind works, learned which buttons to push to make a person keep coming back, and then built those buttons right into the thing in your pocket. Stan did not freely decide to spend thousands of dollars on a boring game at 3 in the morning. The game was built, down to its smallest detail, to make a person like Stan do exactly that, to make sure the point cannot be missed. The show brings in the devil himself to explain the science of it. Satan appears to Stan and talks to him about how need works inside a person, how the brain gives a little burst of good feeling when you get a reward, and how a thing can be built to keep dangling small rewards in front of you so that your brain keeps chasing the next burst. It is the show's way of saying that this is not magic and it is not the person being weak. It is a real machine working on a real part of the human mind. A machine someone designed knowing exactly what it would do. The funny part, the cartoon devil giving a calm lecture, is wrapped around an idea the show wants you to take seriously. The episode also ties this trap to the older, more familiar traps people already understand, and this is a smart move because it makes the new thing feel less strange. Stan's grandpa has a problem with gambling machines, the kind that take an old person's money, a coin at a time, with flashing lights and promises. Stan's dad, Randy, has his own problem with drinking, even though he refuses to admit it. The show lines these up next to the phone game on purpose. It is saying that the thing in the phone belongs in the same family as the slot machine and the bottle. It is the same kind of carefully built trap, designed to find the part of a person that cannot say no and to squeeze it for everything it is worth. The phone just made that trap small enough to fit in a pocket and quiet enough to carry everywhere. There is a sharp little joke buried in the family part of the story that makes the whole thing land harder. Randy spends the entire episode worried about the addictions running through his family, lecturing Stan, fretting that his son inherited a weakness for this kind of thing, all while flatly refusing to see his own drinking problem staring back at him. And at the very end, after everyone has supposedly learned their lesson and agreed to stop, after Stan and his grandpa sit down to play a harmless board game instead, Randy walks in and immediately asks if they want to bet money on the outcome. He cannot help himself. The pull is still there, in him, in all of them. The lesson did not take. The trap does not release a person just because the episode is ending. What makes this episode brave is that it refuses to let the audience off easy, and it refuses to let itself off easy either. The men who make South Park did a large amount of real research into how these games actually work before writing this, and several companies had even tried to get them to make one of these money-pulling games using their own show's characters. They could have done it. They could have made that money. Instead, they made an episode tearing the whole practice apart and explaining, step by step, exactly how it preys on people. The episode is the show looking at a trap it was personally invited to help build, and choosing instead to show the audience how the trap is made so the audience might see it the next time it is set for them. When you place this episode in the line of the ones before it, you can feel the show's argument deepening and darkening. In the beginning, the harm looked like a hunger inside people, a want they could not control. The show seemed to be saying, mostly, that people were doing this to themselves. This episode keeps that idea, but adds a heavy new piece to it. Yes, the hunger is real, and yes, people carry the weakness inside them, but now there are people on the other side, smart and patient people, studying that hunger and that weakness and building machines designed to feed on them. The person is still part of the problem. They always are in this show, but the person is no longer alone in the room. Someone is sitting across from them, watching how the human mind breaks and building the next thing to break it a little better. This shifts how you read everything that came before. When Cartman could not stop wanting the tablet, when the town could not survive without the connection, when people poured their secrets out online and reached for prettier fake faces, maybe none of those were simply free choices made by weak people. Maybe each of those wants had been studied and shaped and fed by someone who profited from the wanting. The show does not erase the idea that people are responsible for themselves. It holds on to that, but it adds the cold fact that the thing in the hand was engineered, deliberately, to make putting it down as hard as it could possibly be. The choice was never as free as it felt, because the thing being chosen was built by people who had figured out how choices get made and how to bend them. The episode ends without any real victory. Satan fights the devil who runs the game company and wins that particular battle, but the larger machine grinds on untouched. The game companies keep their money. The characters whose faces sell the game accept their giant checks and decide that since everyone else is doing it, it must be fine. The trap remains in the world, fully built, waiting for the next person, and the family, supposedly cured, sits down to a clean and simple game, only for Randy to instantly try to turn it into a bet. The show is telling you that knowing about the trap is not the same as being free of it. You can understand exactly how the machine works. You can have it explained to you in plain words by the devil himself, and you can still pick the thing back up the moment it buzzes in the dark. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the screen in the pocket has now been shown for what it partly is, a thing built on purpose to keep you holding it. But there is a stranger turn still ahead in this story, because once a person has spent enough hours pulled into the screen, watching, tapping, feeding the machine, something quietly shifts in how they live. They begin to drift away from doing things themselves at all. They start to sit back and watch other people do the living for them through the screen, and to feel, somehow, that watching the life is just as good as having one. Section 6. Watching other people live instead of living rehash is the 9th episode of the the 18th season of South Park. It first aired on December 3, 2014, and it was the 256th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It is the episode where the show stops worrying about what the screen takes from people and starts worrying about something quieter and sadder. It worries about what the screen turns people into, because by this point the device had done more than swallow time and money and faces. It had begun to change the basic way a person lives a day. People were drifting out of doing things and into watching other people do them, and somewhere in that drift, watching a life had started to feel like the same thing as having one. The story begins with something small and warm. Kyle wants to play a video game with his little brother Ike. He goes out and buys a brand new game, the kind kids had been excited about for years, and he rushes home ready to sit down on the couch with his brother and play it together, side by side, the way he always had. This is the simple, human thing Kyle wants. Two brothers, one couch, one game, an afternoon spent together, doing a thing they both enjoy. It is the kind of ordinary closeness that does not seem like much until you watch it disappear. But Ike does not want to play. When Kyle finds him, Ike is staring at a screen, watching a video of a famous online person playing that exact game and talking over it. Ike would rather watch a stranger play the game than play it himself. This stops Kyle cold. He cannot understand it. Why would anyone choose to watch another person play when they could just pick up the controller and play it on their own? The game is right there. The fun is right there, free for the taking. And Ike is choosing to sit back and watch someone else have that fun instead. Watching the watching, one step removed from the thing itself. The online person Ike is watching is based on a real and very famous internet star, a man who became known around the world for filming himself playing games and reacting loudly to them, and who appears in this very episode. Millions of children really did spend their afternoons exactly the way Ike does, watching this man and others like him play games, react to things, and talk over their lives. The show did not invent this behavior to mock it. It pointed a camera at a thing that was already happening in real bedrooms all over the world and asked a simple question. What does it mean that an entire generation of kids would rather watch a person do a thing than do the thing themselves? Kyle, frustrated, decides he will get through to Ike and the other kids by setting up a proper game afternoon, the old way. He invites Ike's friends over to the house to play games together, the way kids used to. They all come over, and then they all sit in Ike's bedroom and stare at their own screens, watching other people play, ignoring the actual games sitting right there in the room, ignoring each other, each one alone inside his own little glowing rectangle, even though they are crowded into the same small space. They are together in body and completely apart in every other way. The room is full and empty at the same time. When Kyle and his friend Stan try to step in, try to tell these kids that games are meant to be played and not just watched, the kids brush them off without a second thought. They call Kyle and Stan old. They call them grandpas. And there is a real sting in this, because Kyle and Stan are children too. They are not old men. They are kids who happen to remember a slightly older way of doing things, a way that already feels ancient to children, only a little younger than them. The gap between watching a life and living one had opened so fast that even 9-year-olds found themselves standing on the wrong side of it, called relics by kids barely younger than themselves. Kyle puts his sadness into plain words, and the words are the heart of the episode. He says the living room is dying. He does not mean the room itself. He means the thing the room used to stand for, the place where people gathered together to share an experience in the same space, facing the same screen, laughing at the same moment, being in one another's company while they did it. That shared room, that shared experience, that being together while doing a thing was quietly going away. It was being replaced by a bunch of separate people in separate spaces, each watching their own screen alone, each consuming a thing made by someone far away, none of them truly with anyone. The living room was dying, and almost nobody but Kyle seemed to notice or care. Then the show, as it always does, turns the knife by bringing in Cartman. Cartman sees how popular these online performers are, how many kids watch them, how much attention and money flows to a person who simply films himself reacting to things. And Cartman wants in, so he starts his own version. He begins filming himself watching and commenting on the things his classmates do, talking over their lives the way the online stars talk over their games. He does not make anything himself. He does not play anything or build anything or do anything. He simply watches other people and reacts loudly, and he calls that his work, and people watch it. This is where the episode reaches its strangest and sharpest idea. Cartman is not even commenting on games anymore. He is commenting on people commenting. He sits and watches and reacts to other people who are themselves just watching and reacting. The thing being consumed has drifted so far from any real activity that there is no real activity left at the bottom of it at all. It is reactions stacked react on top of reaction, watching piled on top of watching, layer after layer, with no actual living thing anywhere underneath. And worst of all, it works. People watch Cartman watch. Among the people who subscribe to watch Cartman do nothing is Ike, which wounds Kyle all over again, because the little brother who would not play a game with him will happily watch Cartman make fun of people for a living. The show lets you feel how empty this is by showing you the alternative right at the start and then taking it away. Remember what Kyle wanted in the first place. He wanted to sit on a couch with his little brother and play a game together. That was the whole dream. It was small, and it was real, and it was warm. And every layer of screen and watching and reacting that the episode piles on is a layer placed between Kyle and that simple dream. By the end, the brothers are further apart than ever, and Ike is deeper inside the screen than ever, watching strangers and watching Cartman, while the actual game and the actual brother sit ignored in the actual room. The real thing was right there the whole time, and the screen won anyway. What makes this episode fit so perfectly into the show's long argument is how it changes the nature of the harm. In the earlier episodes, the screen took things from people. It took their privacy, their money, their honest faces, their hours. But a person who has been robbed is still a person. This episode shows the screen doing something deeper than robbing. It shows the screen changing what a person even wants. Ike does not want to play and get talked out of it. Ike genuinely would rather watch. The desire itself has been rewired. The kids do not feel like they are missing out by watching instead of doing. They feel like watching is the better version, the cooler version, and that the kids who still want to do things are the sad and outdated ones. The screen did not just take the living, it made the living look uncool. There is a real and honest origin to this episode that makes it hit harder. The man who created the show has said this story came partly from his own life, from watching a child close to him choose to watch online game videos rather than play, and the show's makers had also noticed something about their own work. They had made a video game of their own, and they realized that more people had experienced that game by watching a famous online star play through it than by buying it and playing it themselves. People had watched their game more than they had played it. The makers of South Park were standing inside the exact thing this episode is. They had made a thing meant to be played, and the world had decided it would rather watch someone else play it. The episode is them looking at that strange fact about their own creation and feeling old and a little sad and deciding to say so out loud. The show is careful, as always, not to let anyone fully off the hook, including the kids and including the audience. It would be easy to make the online stars the villains, the loud performers pulling kids away from real life, but the episode does not really blame them. The kids chose to watch. Cartman chose to copy them. The audience chose to make these performers famous and rich by giving them all those hours of attention. The performers are only giving people what people lined up to want. The deeper problem, the one the show keeps circling back to across every episode, is the want itself. The strange new hunger to watch a life rather than live one, to sit back and consume instead of stepping forward and doing. The screen offered that option. People reached for it, and then, slowly, they forgot there had ever been another way. When you set this episode beside the ones before it, you can see the whole shape of what the show is building. First, people could not live without the connection. Then the device became part of who they were. Then they gave away their privacy and their secrets to be watched. Then they replaced their real faces with prettier lies. Then the device was revealed as a built trap, made to keep them holding it. And now, here, the device has quietly changed the basic shape of a human day. People are no longer mainly doers who sometimes watch. They are becoming mainly watchers who rarely do, sitting alone in full rooms, consuming the lives of distant strangers, and feeling, somehow, that this is enough, that watching the life is as good as having the life. Kyle stands almost alone against this, holding a game nobody will play, in a room he says is dying. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And yet, for all the sadness in it, this episode still imagines a person who at least sees the problem clearly. Kyle knows something is wrong. He feels the loss. He names it. He is sad about it, which means he is still awake to it. But the show was about to look at the opposite kind of person. The person who does not feel the loss at all, who has gone past sadness into something smoother and emptier, who has learned to wrap the screen around themselves like a soft blanket and shut the whole hard world out, and who feels, inside that blanket, not sad at all, but calm and protected and perfectly, dangerously safe. Section 7, The Room Where Nothing Bad Can Reach You Safe Space, is the 5th episode of the 19th season of South Park. It first aired on October 21st, 2015, and it was the 262nd episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It is the episode where the show looks at a person who has stopped feeling sad about the screen at all and asks whether that calm is a kind of health or a kind of sickness. Kyle, in the last episode, at least still hurt. He still knew something good was being lost. This episode is about the people who have learned to feel nothing hard ever again, who have built themselves a soft little room where only nice things can reach them, and who feel, inside that room, wonderfully safe. The story starts with Cartman in trouble, and the trouble is small and ordinary. He posted a picture of himself online, a picture meant to show off, and people left mean comments under it. They made fun of his body. They said cruel things. This is the most normal thing in the world now. You put a picture of yourself out for everyone to see, and some of the everyone is unkind about it. For most of human history, a person never had to face a crowd of strangers judging their body all at once. Now it happens to anyone who posts, every day, and Cartman has just walked face first into it, and it crushes him. He cries about it. The mean words from strangers land on him with a real and heavy weight. The school's principal decides to fix this in a strange way, and the strangeness is the whole point. Instead of telling Cartman to toughen up, or to stop reading the comments, or to simply log off, the adults decide that Cartman should be protected from ever seeing the cruelty at all. They assign another student the job of going through Cartman's online comments and removing every mean one, so that Cartman only ever sees the kind words. Someone else will wade through the ugliness so that Cartman never has to. He will live inside a version of the internet where everyone loves him because a person behind the curtain is quietly deleting everyone who does not. The job falls to Butters. The principal pressures the kids, and where others refuse and accept punishment, Butters agrees, partly out of fear of getting in trouble at home. So Butters becomes the person who reads all the cruelty, so Cartman does not have to. He sits and scrolls through every vicious comment, every hateful word, and he pulls out the nice ones and hands those to Cartman on clean paper, hiding all the poison. Cartman reads his stack of kind words and feels wonderful. He believes the whole world adores him. He has no idea that a boy is sitting in the dark somewhere, absorbing every cruel thing said about him, taking the hits so that Cartman can float along feeling love. And it does not stop with Cartman. Once the idea exists, everyone wants it. Other people hear that there is a way to feel only the good and never the bad, a way to be told only that you are wonderful, while someone else quietly handles everyone who disagrees, and they line up for it. Famous people want it. Important people want it. Soon Butters is not just cleaning up one boy's comments. He is the hidden filter for a growing crowd of people who all want to live inside the same soft room where nothing unkind can ever reach them. And all of that unkindness has to go somewhere. It goes into Butters. He carries it for all of them. The weight of it slowly breaks Butters down. Reading an endless river of human cruelty, hour after hour, with no break, takes a real toll on him. He stops sleeping. He starts to come apart. The episode shows, without saying it in so many words, that there is a true cost to all this comfort, and the cost is simply paid by someone you cannot see. The people in their safe little rooms feel calm and loved precisely because someone else is drowning in the ugliness on their behalf. The comfort is not free. It was never free. It just moved the pain somewhere out of sight, onto a person whose suffering keeps everyone else feeling safe. The show gives this idea a face by inventing a character and naming him Reality. Reality shows up, a figure meant to stand for the plain hard truth of the world, the truth these people are all hiding from. And Reality says the thing the whole episode is built around. He tells the crowd that being criticized, being judged, hearing things you do not want to hear is simply part of being alive. It cannot be deleted. It cannot be filtered away. A life with no hard truths in it is not really a life. The world contains unkindness and disappointment and judgment, and a grown person learns to carry those things, not to pay someone to hide them. Reality tells them, plainly, that they cannot run from him forever. And the crowd's answer to this is the darkest joke in the episode. They do not listen to Reality. They do not accept his hard truth. Instead, they decide to get rid of him. They put Reality to death, publicly, cheering as they do it, choosing to kill off the very idea of hard truth rather than live alongside it. They would rather destroy reality itself than feel one uncomfortable thing. It is grim and it is exaggerated, the way the show always exaggerates. But the meaning underneath is clear and serious. People had grown so used to filtering out everything they did not want to feel that they were prepared to throw away truth entirely, to choose a pleasant lie over a hard fact every single time, forever. There is a second story running through the episode that says the same thing from a different angle. Randy keeps going to a fancy grocery store, and every time he checks out, the worker asks if he wants to give a little money to help feed hungry children. And Randy feels terrible, not because of the hungry children, but because being asked makes him uncomfortable. He does not want to feel the small sting of being put on the spot, of being reminded that suffering exists and that he could help and is choosing not to. So Randy launches a whole campaign against being made to feel bad at the store. He wants the discomfort comfort removed. He wants to buy his groceries without ever being reminded that the world contains need. He too wants a safe little room, one where no hard truth about other people's suffering can reach him while he shops. Both stories point at the same new thing the screen had helped create. People had discovered they could curate their whole world, trim away everything unpleasant, and live inside a smooth, soft, endlessly flattering version of life. The comment filter does it for Cartman. The campaign does it for Randy. The screen had taught people that they could choose what reached them, that they could delete the bad and keep only the good, that they never had to sit with anything that hurt. And once people learned they could do that, they wanted to do it with everything, all the time, until the very idea of an uncomfortable truth started to feel like an attack, like something that should not be allowed to exist. This is a real shift in the show's long argument, and it is worth seeing clearly. In the earlier episodes, the harm was that people lost things to the screen, or were trapped by it, or were changed by it into watchers instead of doers. Here the harm is gentler on the surface and worse underneath. People are not suffering. That is the problem. They have arranged their lives so that they never have to feel anything hard, and they call this safety, and they like it. The screen gave them the power to wall themselves off from every uncomfortable truth, and they use that power eagerly, and the result is a person who feels calm and loved and protected while remaining completely unable to face the actual world. The calm is not health. The calm is the sickness wearing the mask of health. The episode is honest, in the way the show is always honest, about whose fault this is. The principal pressures the kids, yes, and the culture around them rewards this kind of hiding, but Cartman chose to want a world that only flatters him. Randy chose to fight being reminded that suffering exists. The crowd chose to put truth itself to death rather than feel one bad feeling. Nobody forced any of them into their soft little rooms. They built those rooms themselves, gladly, and they staffed them with hidden people like Butters who would carry the pain they refused to carry. The screen made the soft room possible. The people moved into it on their own and locked the door behind them. And there is the cost that the comfortable never see, sitting at the center of it all. Butters, the boy who absorbs everyone's cruelty so that everyone else can feel safe. He is the price of the soft room, the hidden person who pays for everyone's comfort with his own well-being. The show puts him there to make a point that is easy to miss when you are the one being protected. Somebody always pays. When a person arranges their life so that nothing hard ever reaches them, the hardness does not vanish. It simply lands on someone else, someone out of view, someone whose job is to keep the comfortable comfortable. The soft room is built on the back of a person breaking quietly in the next room over. There is a quiet detail in how all of this works that the episode wants you to sit with. The comfort never disappears. It only changes hands. When Cartman gets to feel adored, when the famous people get to read only their kind words, the cruelty they were spared does not vanish into thin air. It goes somewhere. It goes into Butters, who reads every word of it so they do not have to. The math of the soft room is simple and cold. For one person to feel nothing hard, another person has to feel all of it. This is the part most people never see, because the whole design of the soft room is to keep its cost out of view. The people inside it are not cruel. They are not even thinking about Butters. They genuinely believe they have simply found a nicer way to live, a way to be online without being hurt, and from inside the room, that belief feels true, because the pain really is gone. For them, they do not know it has a new owner. They do not ask where it went. The room works precisely because it hides its own price, and a price you cannot see is a price you never have to feel guilty about. The show had made this exact point before, in a different costume. The phone company built the trap and the player walked in. The platform owner opened the door and the people invited him through. Again and again, the harm runs through somebody, and the somebody is usually the person least able to say no. Butters does not volunteer out of kindness. He is cornered, afraid of getting in trouble, and so he becomes the place all the cruelty drains into, while everyone above him floats along feeling fine. The weak carry what the comfortable refuse to. That is the real warning hiding under the soft jokes. A person who arranges their whole world so nothing hard ever reaches them has not actually defeated the hardness. They have only paid someone, somewhere, to carry it out of sight. The room feels like peace because the breaking is happening in the next room over, behind a door the comfortable will never open. When this episode aired, some people argued about its message, and that argument is part of what makes it interesting. Some saw it as the show telling people to toughen up and stop being so sensitive. Others saw something more careful, a worry not just about thin skin, but about what happens to a person, and to a whole group of people, when they lose the ability to sit with anything difficult at all. Both readings see the same fear underneath, the fear that the screen had taught people to expect a world with no hard edges, and that a person who cannot bear a hard edge is a person who cannot really live in the real world, because the real world is full of them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the show has drawn its picture of the comfortable person, the one who feels no loss and calls the wall around them safety. But all this hiding raises a darker question the show had circled for years and was finally ready to face. What about the people on the other side of the screen, the ones doing the hurting? The mean comments under Cartman's picture came from somewhere, typed by real fingers belonging to real people, and the show was about to follow them back to their source, into a quiet basement, to one ordinary man who had found that the screen let him turn cruel in the dark while staying perfectly kind in the light. Section 8, The Quiet Man in the Basement Skank Hunt, is the second episode of the 20th season of South Park. It first aired on September 21st, 2016, and it was the 269th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. It sits at the start of a long, connected story that ran across nearly the whole 20th season, a story the show built piece by piece rather than wrapping up in one half hour. The last episode looked at the people hiding from cruelty inside soft little rooms. This episode turns around to look at the people making the cruelty, and it makes one careful, uncomfortable choice. It does not make the cruel person a monster from somewhere else. It makes him a regular dad, a kind, ordinary, educated man who loves his family. And it shows how the screen let that ordinary man become something ugly in the dark while staying perfectly pleasant in the daylight. The cruel person in the story is Gerald, the father of one of the main kids, Kyle. In the daylight, Gerald is exactly what you would expect from a decent man. He is a lawyer. He is a husband and a father. He is polite. He says the right things. He believes himself to be good, and by most measures of his daytime life, he is. But at night, Gerald goes down to his basement, sits at his computer, pours himself a glass of wine, and becomes a person he would never admit to being in the light. He goes online under a hidden name, a name that is not his, and he spends his nights being as cruel as he can possibly be to strangers, mostly women, attacking them, mocking them, tearing them down, for no reason other than that it feels good and nobody knows it is him. The show is very careful about how it presents Gerald's nighttime self, and the care is the whole point. It does not show a tortured, miserable man taking out his pain on the world. It shows a man having the time of his life. There is a stretch of the episode where Gerald is cruel online at night and then walks through his town the next day glowing with happiness, light on his feet, kind to everyone he passes, practically dancing through his day. The cruelty does not weigh on him. It lifts him. He goes home, hurts strangers for fun in the dark, and wakes up cheerful. The screen has handed him a way to be vicious that costs him nothing, that nobody can trace back to him, and that leaves him feeling great. The meanness and the good mood live side by side in the same man, and he sees no problem with it at all. This is the idea the whole episode is built to deliver, and it is a hard one. The cruel person online is not some separate species of villain. He is your neighbor. He is a dad. He is a man who, in person, would never dream of saying these things to anyone's face, who would be horrified to be seen as cruel, who genuinely thinks of himself as one of the good ones. The screen did not turn a good man into a bad one. It did something stranger and more troubling. It opened a small private door through which an ordinary man could step out of his own daytime decency for a few hours, do real harm to real people, and then step back through the door and be decent again by morning, with no one any the wiser, including, in a way, himself. Gerald's hidden name lets him believe the cruelty is not really him. That is the trick the screen plays, because nobody can see his face, because the name is made up, because the people he hurts are just words on a screen to him. Gerald can tell himself that none of it counts, that it is just messing around, just a game, just stirring people up for laughs. He even says as much, brushing off the idea that he is truly a cruel person, insisting he just likes getting a reaction. The hidden name is a costume, and the costume lets him pretend that the man wearing it is someone other than himself. The real Gerald, the good dad, stays clean. The costume does the dirty work. He gets to be cruel without ever having to be a cruel person, in his own mind. But the show refuses to let the cruelty stay weightless, and this is where the connected story gets serious. The harm Gerald does in the dark does not vanish into the screen. It lands on real people who feel it in their real lives. The episode shows the damage spreading outward from his basement like a stain. One of the kids at school, a girl, is so hurt by the cruelty online that she deletes herself from the internet entirely, and the way the show films it, you are meant for a moment to fear something far worse has happened to her. The show stages her quitting the internet as if it were a death, because to a child whose whole social world lives on the screen, losing that world can feel like the end of everything. The people around her grieve as though she is gone, even though she is standing right there, because the version of her that lived online has been driven away. And the show pushes the consequences further still, into genuinely dark territory, to make sure you understand that the words typed in the dark have weight. As the larger season-long story unfolds, Gerald's cruelty reaches a woman in another country, a real grown woman with a real life, and the relentless attacks on her end in tragedy. A person dies. The show does not play this for laughs. It lets it be heavy. It wants you to draw the line all the way from the cheerful dad in his cozy basement, sipping wine and having fun, to a coffin on the other side of the world. The man who told himself it was just a game, just words, just harmless fun, set off something that ended a life. The screen let him feel like none of it was real. The show insists that all of it was. This is the part of the episode that connects it most tightly to everything that came before. In Safe Space, the episode right before this one in our story, people hid from cruel comments inside soft little rooms and paid a hidden person to absorb the pain. This episode shows you where those cruel comments come from. They come from the Geralds. They come from ordinary, pleasant people who discovered that the screen lets them be vicious in private and decent in public at the same time. Put the two episodes together and you get the full circle of the thing. On one side, people building walls to hide from cruelty. On the other side, people in basements manufacturing that cruelty for fun. And the same screen that built the walls also built the basements. The same device that lets you hide from the meanness lets someone else create it without consequence. The show is making a claim here that runs against the easy story, the same way it always does. The easy story about online cruelty is that it comes from broken, miserable, damaged people, outsiders, losers, sitting alone in misery and lashing out. That story is comforting because it lets the rest of us off the hook. We are not like those people. We are normal. We are kind. The show looks at that comforting story and rejects it. It says, no, the cruelty does not come from some separate broken tribe. It comes from regular people. It comes from the dad next door. It comes from the lawyer, the husband, the man who seems fine, the man who is fine. In the daylight, the screen did not find the worst people in the world and amplify them. It took ordinary people and quietly offered each of them a private door to their own worst behavior, and a great many of them walked through it and felt fine afterward. The detail the show keeps returning to, the one that makes Gerald so unsettling, is his happiness. A miserable villain is easy to dismiss. You can look at a miserable, hateful person and tell yourself they are sick, broken, nothing like you. Gerald is not miserable. Gerald is having fun. He is enjoying his life. He loves his family, and he is cruel to strangers, and he sleeps soundly and wakes up glad, and he holds all of that together without strain because the screen has let him split himself cleanly into a good daytime man and a cruel nighttime ghost, and never have to look at the seam between them. That is what makes him frightening. Not that he is a monster, but that he is not one, and yet he does monstrous things, lightly, easily, and feels wonderful the whole time. Later in the connected story, when the danger of being caught grows real, Gerald scrambles to destroy the evidence of what he has done, frantically trying to erase his hidden self before anyone can connect it back to his daytime face. And this too tells you something. The thing Gerald fears is not having done harm. He does not lie awake guilty over the people he hurt. The thing he fears is being seen. He fears the daytime man and the nighttime ghost being revealed as the same person. As long as the two stay separate, as long as nobody pulls back the curtain, Gerald feels fine about everything he has done. The cruelty was never the problem for him. Getting caught was the only problem. The screen had taught him to measure right and wrong, not by the harm he caused, but by whether anyone could trace it to him. When you place this episode in the full line of the show's argument, you can see how far the screen has carried people by now. In the beginning, the screen took small things, time and money and attention. Then it became part of who people were. Then it watched them and they let it. Then it remade their faces into lies. Then it trapped them on purpose. Then it turned them from doers into watchers. Then it let them hide from every hard truth. And now, here, it has done something to the heart of a person. It has let an ordinary man keep his good daytime life fully intact while running a cruel secret life in the dark, and feel no tear between the two. The screen did not make Gerald evil. It gave his ordinary, everyday, hidden meanness a place to live and a mask to wear, and it let him pretend the masked man was not him. The show, true to itself, does not pretend the screen is the only guilty party. The screen offered Gerald the door. Gerald opened it. Gerald sat down at the computer every night and chose, again and again, to be cruel, and then chose to brush it off as a game, and then chose to fear exposure more than he feared the harm he caused. The device handed him the private door and the costume and the feeling that none of it was real, but the cruelty was his. It came out of him. It was inside the pleasant dad the whole time, waiting for a safe place to come out, and the screen simply gave it one. The show holds both truths at once, as it always does. The tool made it easy. The man still chose. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the screen has now been shown to let a good person do real harm while staying sure of his own goodness. But Gerald at least did it on purpose, in private, knowing on some level it was wrong, which is why he feared being caught. The show was about to follow this idea somewhere stranger and more modern, because the lies spreading through the screen were no longer only the deliberate cruelty of hidden men in basements. A new kind of lie was loose, one that ordinary, well-meaning people would read and believe and pass along to everyone they knew, certain they were doing good, never suspecting it was false, and impossible to stop, because the screen had made the false thing travel faster than anyone could ever chase it down. Section 9. The lie that moves faster than the truth. Franchise prequel is the 4th episode of the 21st season of South Park. It first aired on October 11th, 2017, and it was the 286th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. The last episode followed Cruelty back to one quiet man in a basement, a person who chose to lie on purpose and feared being caught. This episode looks at a different and newer kind of lie, one that does not need a cruel person hiding in the dark to do its damage. It looks at lies that spread through ordinary, well-meaning people, lies that travel through a screen so fast and so easily that no truth can ever catch up to them, and it asks a frightening question. What do you do about a lie when the lie moves faster than anyone can chase it? The story starts with the kids playing a game they have played for years, pretending to be superheroes with made-up names and powers. They have a plan to turn their superhero group into something big and famous, the way real superhero stories become huge worldwide brands. They are excited, they have a future mapped out, and then someone sets out to ruin them, not with fists, not with cruelty to their faces, but with lies posted online. Fake stories start appearing about the kids, stories that are not true, claiming they did terrible things they never did. And these fake stories spread through the town, read and believed and passed along by the adults, until the children's good names are wrecked by things that simply never happened. The person behind the fake stories is Butters, wearing the costume of his pretend villain self. Butters has discovered that he can use a giant online platform, the kind where everyone shares news and pictures and updates with their friends and family, to plant lies about the kids and let those lies spread on their own. He does not have to convince anyone, he just has to post the lie and let it go, and the platform carries it from person to person, each one believing it and showing it to the next, until the lie is everywhere and nobody can remember where it started. Butters even turns this into a kind of business, spreading lies about people for a purpose, because he has learned how easy and how powerful it is to push a false thing into the stream and watch it flow. What makes the episode sharp is how it shows the adults reacting to the lies. The grown-ups of the town read the fake stories about the children and they believe them completely, without question. These are not stupid people meant to be mocked for being foolish. They are regular parents and they see a story on their screen, and because it is on their screen, sitting right there among the real news and the updates from their friends, they assume it must be true. They do not check, they do not pause, they do not wonder where it came from. They read the lie, they believe the lie, and they pass the lie along, all while feeling like responsible people staying informed. The platform mixed the false thing in with the true things so smoothly that the adults lost the ability to tell which was which. The town decides the problem is the platform itself, so they invite the man who runs it to come and answer for what his creation is doing. And here the episode makes its strangest and most memorable choice. The man who runs the giant platform, a real and famous person in life, is shown as a bizarre, almost robotic figure who speaks in a flat, badly matched voice, like a person in a cheaply made movie whose words do not line up with his mouth. He comes to the town, and instead of helping, instead of taking responsibility, he simply makes everything worse by being impossible to deal with. He dodges every question. He pretends not to understand. He acts as if the people trying to pin him down are the ones being unreasonable. Then the episode turns the platform owner into a walking picture of what his creation actually does to people's lives, and this is the cleverest part. The man does not just refuse to help. He starts showing up uninvited inside people's homes. He walks into their houses. He climbs into their cars. He sits at their tables and eats their food. He behaves as though he has every right to be everywhere in their private lives, as though their homes and their cars and their meals are all his to wander through whenever he likes. He is intrusive in the most literal way the show can draw, planting himself in the middle of private spaces and refusing to leave. This is the show turning an idea into a body you can see. The whole point about these giant platforms is that they reach deep into the private corners of people's lives, gathering and spreading and knowing far more than people realize, sitting in the middle of moments that used to be private. The show makes that invisible reach into a visible man, standing in your kitchen, riding in your car, eating off your plate, fate, going wherever he pleases inside your life. And when the townspeople call the authorities to make him leave, they are told something that lands like a cold splash of water. They cannot make him go because they invited him in. They let him into their lives themselves. They signed up. They opened the door. And having opened it, they have no right anymore to tell him to get out. That detail connects this episode straight back to a moment from much earlier in this whole story. Remember the episode where Kyle tapped agree on a long block of words he never read, and by tapping it, signed away rights he did not know he had? This is the same idea grown larger and more frightening. The townspeople invited the platform into their lives, agreed to its terms, opened their homes and their private moments to it, and now they cannot undo that choice. The intrusion is not being forced on them against their will. It is something they welcomed, signed up for, said yes to, and now cannot take back. The man in their kitchen is there because they asked him in, and the show makes sure the police say so out loud. The deepest fear in the episode is about the nature of the lie itself, and how it cannot be caught. A lie used to be a slow thing. If someone told a lie about you, it could only spread as fast as people could talk, mouth to mouth, and the truth had a fair chance of catching up and setting the record straight. The screen broke that. Now a lie can be posted once and reach thousands of people in minutes, and from those thousands it jumps to thousands more, faster and faster, while the truth is still putting its shoes on. By the time anyone proves the lie is false, the lie has already been everywhere, already been believed, already done its damage. Proving it false barely helps, because the people who believed it have moved on and will never see the correction. The lie wins simply by being faster. The way the kids finally beat the lie is itself a comment on the whole mess. They do not defeat it with the truth. Truth, in this story, is too slow and too weak to win on its own. Instead, they fight the lie with another piece of cleverly aimed online content, staging a situation and capturing it in a way that paints the platform owner as the villain, using the same fast-spreading power that was used against them. They beat the lie by playing the same game the lie plays, by making their own piece of content travel fast and hit hard. The truth did not save them. A better weapon did, and that is a quietly bleak thing for the show to suggest, that against a fast lie, the slow truth is almost useless, and the only thing that works is to fight fire with fire. When you set this episode beside the one before it, you can see how the show's picture of online lying has grown. In the basement episode, the lie had a clear author, one man, hiding, choosing to be cruel, knowing it was wrong, fearing to be caught. You could at least point at him and say, there, that is the source, that is who is doing this. This episode shows a kind of lie with no single clear source you can punish. Butters started it, yes, but once it was loose, the lie spread through hundreds of ordinary, well-meaning people who believed they were just sharing news. There is no basement to raid, no single villain to expose. The lie lives in everyone now, passed hand to hand by people who think they are being good. You cannot catch it because it is not in one place. It is everywhere, carried by people who do not even know they are carrying it. This is the show looking at a real and growing problem in the world outside the cartoon. By the time this episode aired, the spread of false stories through giant online platforms had become one of the largest worries of the age, with whole countries arguing about lies that traveled the screen faster than anyone could correct them, and ordinary people believing and sharing false things in complete good faith. The show took that enormous, tangled, frightening problem and shrank it down to a size you could hold. A few kids, a few fake stories, one strange intrusive man in everyone's kitchen, and underneath the cartoon, the claim is dead serious. The screen had made the lie faster than the truth, and a world where the lie is faster than the truth is a world where being right is no longer enough to win. The show, as always, does not let people off the hook by blaming only the platform. The platform owner is shown as ridiculous and intrusive and useless, yes, but the townspeople invited him in. The adults chose to believe the fake stories without checking. The people chose to spread the lies they read, feeling responsible while doing something careless. Butters chose to plant the lies in the first place. Every step of the disaster runs through a human choice. The platform made the lie fast and made the intrusion possible, but people opened the door, believed without looking, and passed the poison along with their own hands. The screen built the road. People drove the lie down it, cheerfully, certain they were doing the right thing. There is a particular kind of helplessness in this episode that the show had not quite reached before. In earlier episodes, even when things were bad, there was usually someone who saw the problem clearly and could at least name it. Kyle could say the living room is dying. Wendy could see the fake faces for what they were. Here, almost nobody can see the lie for what it is, because the lie has hidden itself inside the ordinary flow of believable things. The adults cannot tell the fake story from the real one. The truth cannot move fast enough to matter. The intrusive man cannot be removed because everyone invited him in. The trap has closed so smoothly that the people inside it do not even feel trapped. They feel informed. They feel like they are keeping up with the news, and that calm, unknowing helplessness is its own kind of dread. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the show has now followed the screen all the way to a place where lies move faster than truth and intrude into every private corner of life with everyone's cheerful permission. Each episode in this long story has added one more layer of harm, and each has felt heavier than the last. But there was one more idea the show wanted to reach, the one that pulls all the others together. After years of watching people lose their privacy, their faces, their honesty, their ability to face hard truth, and their hold on what is even true, the show was ready to draw the simplest and saddest picture of all. A single person, sitting in a crowd of people who love them, with a box pulled down over their head, choosing the glow of the screen over every living face in the room, and calling that choice peace. Section 10, The Box Over Your Head Buddha Box, is the 8th episode of the 22nd season of South Park. It first aired on November 28, 2018, and it was the 295th episode the show had made. Trey Parker wrote it and directed it. After more than 10 years of circling the screen from every angle, the show finally arrives at the plainest, most direct image of the whole thing. A person sitting in a room full of people who care about them, with a cardboard box pulled down over their head, staring at a phone glowing inches from their face, completely cut off from every living person around them, and feeling, inside that box, calm and protected and perfectly fine. The show had been building toward this picture for a decade, and here it finally draws it, clear and simple and impossible to miss. The story follows Cartman, who has decided he is suffering from a problem with worry and nerves. He goes to talk to a person whose job is to help with troubles of the mind, and he explains what bothers him. What bothers him, it turns out, is people. Other people keep interrupting him. They keep talking to him, getting in his way, pulling at his attention, wanting things from him, when all he wants is to be left alone with his phone. He is happiest, he says, when he is on his phone, and unhappiest when the living world around him insists on being noticed. And the helper, without much thought, hands him a label for this. She tells him he has a problem with worry and nerves, a real condition, a thing to be managed. She gives his desire to avoid all human contact a respectable name. This is the first quiet trick of the episode. Cartman does not have a sickness that makes the world too much for him. Cartman simply prefers his phone to people, and finds people annoying for getting between him and his screen. But the moment a helper gives that preference a serious-sounding name, it becomes something Cartman can hide behind. Now he is not a person being rude and antisocial. He is a person with a condition. He has worry and nerves, you see, and so he cannot be expected to deal with people, and anyone who asks him to is being unkind to a person who is struggling. The label turns his selfishness into something that sounds like suffering, and from then on he uses it as a shield. Then Cartman discovers the box. The Buddha box is the product at the center of the episode, and it is a perfect little invention. It is a cardboard box that fits over a person's head, with a small screen inside it that holds your phone right in front of your eyes, and padding that blocks out the sounds of the world around you. You put it on, and suddenly there is nothing in your world but the glowing phone. No faces, no voices, no room, no people. Just you and the screen, sealed inside a box, with the entire rest of life shut out on the other side of the cardboard. It is sold as a tool for finding peace, for calming your worried mind, for getting a moment of quiet away from the noise of the world. What the box really is, of course, is the truth of the phone made solid. People had already, in real life, learned to wall themselves off from everyone around them by staring down at a screen, present in body but gone in every other way, sitting at dinner tables and on couches and in cars beside the people they love while being 1,000 miles away inside the glass. The box just makes that invisible wall into a real wall you can see. It takes the thing people were already doing, the quiet retreat into the screen, the shutting out of the living room full of people, and gives it a cardboard shape. The show looked at the way people already used their phones to disappear from the people around them and simply built the box that wall had always been. Cartman wears the box everywhere. He wears it in class, he wears it during games, he wears it while people try to talk to him, and the box lets him not hear them, not see them, not deal with them, all while telling everyone that he needs it for his condition, for his worry and nerves. And the worst part, the part that makes the episode bite, is that the box spreads. Other people see Cartman sealed inside his peaceful box, cut off and content, and they want it too. The idea catches. Soon, more and more people around the town are pulling boxes over their own heads, sealing themselves off, retreating into their screens behind cardboard walls, each one alone inside their own little dark space, surrounded by other people who are also alone inside theirs. The show drives the point home through the school principal principal and his partner, who have young children to look after. They put the boxes on, and with the boxes on, they stop paying attention to their own kids. They cannot see them. They cannot hear them. They are sealed away inside their screens while their children go without the attention they need. The show is making the cost of the box concrete and human. When you seal yourself inside the screen, the people who depend on you are left alone outside the box, calling to a parent who cannot hear them through the cardboard. The peace inside the box is bought with the neglect of everyone outside it. There is a moment that captures the whole sad joke of the thing. People gather together in the same room to deal with their shared problem of worry and nerves, sitting in a group the way people do when they want to support one another through something hard. And they sit there in their group, together, all of them, with their boxes pulled down over their heads. They have come together to help each other, and then sealed themselves off from each other the instant they arrive. They are in the same room for the same reason and completely unreachable to one another, each one alone inside their cardboard. A group of people gathered specifically to not be alone, all choosing to be alone anyway. The image is funny and bleak in equal measure, and it says more about the modern world than 100 lectures could. Kyle, once again, is the one who sees it clearly and says the true thing out loud, the same role he played when he watched his little brother choose to watch games instead of play them. Kyle gets angry at Cartman and tells him the plain truth that the whole episode rests on. Everyone, he says, has worry and nerves. Everyone feels nervous and uneasy sometimes. That is simply part of being a person. The difference is that most people feel it and then get on with their lives anyway. They do not get to seal themselves off from the entire world and ignore everyone around them and call it a treatment. They feel the discomfort and they live through it, and they keep showing up for the people in their lives. Kyle is saying that the box is not medicine. The box is just hiding, dressed up as healing. And Cartman, being Cartman, takes Kyle's true words and twists them into something monstrous. Instead of hearing the truth, he decides that worry and nerves are a great cause that everyone should rally behind, that people who feel uneasy deserve special treatment and special tools, and to be left alone whenever they like. He goes to the town's leader and pushes the idea that everyone should be given a box, that the whole town should be allowed to seal itself off, that retreating from the world should be made easy and free for all. He takes a real and serious word that real people use for real struggles, and he uses it as a costume to justify the thing he wanted all along, which was simply to be left alone with his phone and to never have to deal with another human being. The label that was handed to him at the start becomes a weapon he uses to excuse total withdrawal from everyone. When you set this episode at the end of the long line of episodes before it, you can feel that it is meant to be the summary, the final picture, the place all the earlier roads were leading. Think back through the whole journey. People could not bear to be without the connection. The device became part of who they were. They gave away their privacy and begged to be watched. They replaced their true faces with prettier lies. The device was revealed as a built trap. People became watchers instead of doers. They hid from every hard truth inside soft little rooms. Cruelty flowed from quiet basements. Lies outran the truth. And now, at the end of all of it, here is the person those roads were carrying everyone toward. A person in a box, sealed off, alone in a crowd, staring at the glow, calling it peace. The box is the perfect final image because it makes visible everything the show had been saying all along. For 10 years, the show kept insisting that the screen lets people wall themselves off from the real world and the real people in it, and that people do this willingly, and that they feel fine about it, even good, even peaceful, while doing it. The box is all of that made into one object you can hold in your hands. The wall is cardboard now. The retreat is a product you can buy. The peace is the quiet of a person who has shut every living face out of their world and decided they prefer it that way. There is no clearer way to draw the thing than a human being sitting among people who love them with a box over their head, choosing the screen over every one of them. The show is honest, to the very end, about whose choice this is. The box did not force itself onto anyone's head. The phone company did not strap it on. Cartman chose the box. The townspeople chose the box. The principal and his partner chose the box over their own children. Every single box in the episode was pulled down by the hands of the person wearing it, willingly, because they preferred the sealed quiet of the screen to the messy noise of the people around them. The box was sold to them, yes, and the label was handed to them, yes, but they reached for both, gladly, because both gave them permission to do the thing they already wanted to do, which was to disappear from the world while standing right in the middle of it. This episode did not land with everyone when it came out, and that is worth being honest about, because the show's long argument had reached a strange place by then. Some viewers and reviewers felt the episode was too obvious, too much like an older person simply complaining that young people are always on their phones, a tired observation everyone had heard 1,000 times. They felt the show was telling them something they already knew, in a way that did not surprise them anymore. And there is something almost fitting about that reaction. The show had spent over 10 years building toward this image, and by the time it arrived, the thing it was describing had become so completely normal, so much a part of everyday life, that a clear picture of it no longer shocked anyone. People in boxes was no longer a wild cartoon idea. It was just a slightly exaggerated drawing of a regular evening in a regular home. The warning had come true so thoroughly that the warning itself now sounded obvious. That is its own kind of sad ending for the show's decade of warnings. When the internet vanished back in the early episode, the panic was a joke because it was unimaginable. When the box appears here, it is barely a joke at all, because everyone watching already knows the feeling of sitting in a room with people they love while being gone inside a screen. The show had been pointing at a future that was hard to picture, and by the time it finished pointing, that future had quietly become the present, so ordinary that a cartoon about it could be called old news. The thing the show had been afraid of for 10 years had arrived, settled in, and made itself at home, and the arrival was so gentle that hardly anyone noticed it happen. The box also brings back, one last time, the idea that has run underneath every single episode in this story. The screen does not break a person from the outside. It offers a person a way to become more fully whatever they already were, and to feel good about it. Cartman was already selfish, already preferred his own comfort to other people, already wanted to be left alone to please only himself. The box did not make him that way. The box gave his selfishness a respectable shape and a calming glow and a serious-sounding excuse. It let him be the most sealed-off, self-centered version of himself, and call that version peaceful and even brave. That is what the screen had been doing to everyone, all along in every episode. It found the thing already inside a person and gave it a place to grow and a name that made it sound fine. So the show, after 10 years and across every kind of harm it could imagine, finally lays down its plainest picture. A person in a box, alone in a crowd, choosing the glow over every living face and calling it peace. Each episode added a layer, and this one gathered them all into a single image you cannot forget. But an image, even a perfect one, is not yet an argument. The show had shown the same thing happening again and again, in costume after costume, year after year. What remains is to step back from all the boxes and basements and fake faces and rationed minutes, and to ask the simple question that has been waiting underneath every one of them. After all of it, what exactly was South Park trying to tell everyone the whole time, and why did it keep telling them the same thing for more than 10 years straight? If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.